What's good, YouTube? Welcome to the first episode of my pattern review, where I review the patterns that I'm going to be making or that you guys send in to me. For this first episode, I'm going to be making this Traveler notebook cover. This was the first pattern that I saw on Etsy when I searched in leather patterns. It had quite a number of downloads, so I thought it would be a good place to start for the review. I'll tell you all about the build process as I get into it, what I liked about it, and things that I would change. Let's get into it. After purchasing the pattern, you'll see that you've got a couple of different ways of downloading it. You can either get it in A4 or letter for whatever's more convenient for you. You'll also see that it comes with a set of instructions. These instructions cover everything that you'll need to make and the materials and the steps you'll take in which to actually go through the process. They're very clear instructions and something that I do appreciate when a build includes. After we've printed off the pattern, the first thing we have to do is cut it out and then transfer it onto the leather. The entire build is made with a single piece of leather, so this process doesn't take too long at all, and it's quite simple and efficient to get through. Usually I'd use a weight to keep the pieces down while I tape them together, but I only had a coffee handy. It is not a required item. The pattern calls for a piece of leather that's 1.6mm thick. Here I'm using a piece that's 1.9 as I didn't have any handy. I didn't find it to be too thick or bulky when I used it, and I didn't notice any significant creases after I folded the pieces over. I've had this pattern made now for about 2 weeks, and I've been using it in my day-to-day life when I'm playing games with friends. I use it for note-taking, and it's been kept with the rest of my game pieces, meaning it's been tossed haphazardly in and out of my bag when I need it. Over that time, it's been quite convenient to use. I was a little skeptical at first as I thought the pen loop might get in the way and get snagged on things going in and out of my bag. I've purchased a couple of other patterns from this designer, my favorite being the passport cover that I've made. I have a video of that and I'll include it so that you can see it in the top right corner of your screen now. So far, the only complaint I actually have about this pattern is the actual size of it. Now, the dimensions that you use for it are typically a little hard to find here in Australia. I was able to get some notebooks for it off of Amazon for a couple of dollars, but they're these flimsy paperback ones, not something hardcover that I'd like to put in this cover. You can get a moleskin in this size, so it's not too difficult to find, however. But if you did have a specific notebook in mind that you wanted to use, it's worth checking out the dimensions and then resizing the pattern to fit what you need. Another one of the benefits with this pattern is that it comes in multiple sizes. It also has a third option where you can take away the pen loops and you just have a loose notebook cover that doesn't actually seal. It's easily customizable and something that I recommend for most people when they're trying to make something out of leather for the first time. Now that the leather is all cut out, we can talk about the actual construction of the piece. Here I'm dyeing the leather in a Mahogany Pro dye by Febrings. This Pro dye is an alcohol-based dye, which means if you just pass the leather through a tray like I have just once, you'll get an even coat every time. It's one of the easiest ways to dye your leather. The alcohol in the dye will dry out the leather though, so we need to bring some of the moisture back by adding in some neat's foot oil. Adding it in just small circular motions until the leather is nicely coated will allow it to be soft and pliable again, and you won't have to worry about any stiffness or breaking. This is an optional step now where I'm figuring out where my maker's mark will go. I'm just creasing the leather afterwards so I can see exactly where the stamp will go and then lining it up with the set square. Afterwards, I'll transfer it to my clicker press and then we can press the stamp in. When working with veg tan, you often want to wet the leather to make sure that any indents that you put in actually take. If you try and do this on dry leather, you won't get a deep impression and it won't be clear either. Wetting the leather and letting it soak in is an important step. I wanted to get an idea of how the piece will look once all the pieces are folded. And so here I'm just pre-folding them so that when it becomes time to glue, I'll know exactly where to go and how it will look. Now comes time for the most tedious part of the build, sanding the edges. All in all, this build took me around 2 hours from start to finish, with roughly an hour of it being spent on the edges. I take my time with the sanding to make sure that I get a nice clean finish, working up from the grit starting as low as 120 all the way up to 2000 on this project. Once that's done, we'll clean up our edges with our edge beveler just to take off any of the loose threads. This way we get a nice rounded finish and it doesn't leave any of those gross hanging over bits. We'll add a bit of toconol to seal up the edges and get a nice finish on our edges where it will shine and be soft and smooth to the touch. One of the best ways to make your work look more professional is by having clean, finished edges. If you leave them raw, the project does just end up looking unfinished, and it allows moisture to get in and ensures that the piece won't last as long as it would otherwise. Here I'm just using my edge creaser to add a nice decorative outline to the piece and just to break it up so it doesn't look like one solid piece of leather, despite the fact that it is. This is an optional step where you glue down the leather before sewing it. I'm just using some generic contact cement that I got from Bunnings that isn't really typically used for leather. However, it does the job just fine. Once it's been applied to both sides and then let dry till it's just a little bit tacky, I will press them down together so that the pieces get a nice adhesion before sewing. Tamping down the leather with a nylon mallet makes it so that there's no air pockets in between the glue and you get proper adhesion as well. I'm also hammering along the creases just lightly so that I can get a nice right angle on the piece. Now that it's time for sewing, I'm just doing a traditional saddle stitch. There's nothing fancy about this, but just make sure to take your time and go slowly with it to ensure that all your stitches look identical. The worst thing you can do for a piece that you've spent a long time on is to have uneven stitches that make it look sloppy. Once the stitching's done, we'll cut and burn the edges. This helps to keep them in place so that you don't unravel the stitches over time. All that's left to do now is tamp down our stitches and then admire our work. This is a really fun build and it's something that I would recommend to anyone who's interested in making a notebook cover. This pattern review series is something I intend to keep going, and I want your input on it. Please leave a comment telling me what pattern you'd like me to make, or you can include a link or send me an email on any of my socials, which will be linked in the description. I've also made a second copy of this cover, and I'll be giving it to someone who comments on this video. If you're interested in purchasing one of these off me as well, it will be available on my Etsy store linked in the description. This review is in no way sponsored, and I did purchase this pattern myself. I do, however, want to give a thank you to DS Leather Goods for designing it and for consistently making terrific patterns that are fun and simple to make. If you're interested in seeing more pattern reviews, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, leave a comment telling me what you want to see me make next, and if you include a pattern or anything like that, I may select you to win a free copy of this notebook cover. That's all I have for you today, so thank you for watching all the way to the end, and until next time.